So you're a government employee and you're trying to make this decision on whether you should retire or resign from GEPF. And among all the things that you have to check in terms of tax planning, in terms of investment planning, in terms of ensuring that you never run out of money, one of the elements that you want to get your hands on is, what is this going to cost you? Is it going to be more expensive if you had to retire from GEPF? Is it going to be more expensive if you had to resign from GEPF? And the challenge right now is that information is not very transparent. You're finding it a mission to get your hands onto it. Well, in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you a framework that you can use in order to ensure that you determine what the costs are and ultimately find out which route is better for you from a costing perspective. Now, I'm Devanayaka, and since 2004, I've been helping government employees decide whether it's better for them to retire or resign from GEPF. Now, let's get started because there's a lot of information that I want to share with you. In order for me to give you the most value here, I'm going to use a statement from a member. This is just so that you can start to work with some of the figures. Again, you can rewatch this video and plug in your figures, but use the same formulas that I'm about to share. You can see from this statement, the member's normal retirement value is 28,386 Rand. That's the monthly income. And the member gets a 1.257 million lump sum. That's the gratuity benefit if the member had to retire. You can also notice here that the resignation benefit sits just over 5.1 million. So the first thing that I want to share with you is costs are broken up into two parts. You have the initial costs as well as the ongoing or costs that will happen at a later stage, which I term as the hidden costs, right? And I'll show you why in a short while. Now, it might seem alarming to you, but there is going to be an initial cost on retiring from GEPF. And I'll share with you how I go about determining this. Again, you can do this when you're calculating your benefits, so you see if the same cost applies to you. Notice here that the member should be getting a lump sum of 1.2 million if the member had to retire. And if you do the calculation with me, you can follow along here. Member has 5.1 million as a resignation benefit. Now, if you divide that by 3 in order to get the lump sum, the 1/3 benefit, you see this member should be getting 1.7 million. You can press pause here and do the calculation on your own using a calculator. The member should be getting a 1.7 million value, but in actual fact, the lump sum gratuity sits at 1.2. So this is what the member should be getting. This is what the member is actually getting. Now, I'm referring to that as the cost of retirement, right? Meaning if the member opts to retire on day one, the amount of money that's withheld is 448,980 Rand. Now, you can do the calculation on your own to see how this applies to you. One key piece of information that I want you to be mindful of is your gratuity benefit and the amount that you'll get at retirement, what they determine as a normal retirement, is calculated up to age 60. If you are at 60 or older, it's calculated up to age 65, meaning it's calculated in the future, right? It's a future value. Whereas your resignation benefit is calculated as at now. So you want to be mindful when you're determining this. It means that in the future, your resignation value is going to increase. I'll use an example. Let's say you are, let me actually take you to the iPad so I can illustrate the point for you and you understand this a lot better. So let's say you are 56 years old right now. This is where you are. It means that your GEPF statement is actually calculated to age 60. So all the figures when it comes to retirement, that is going to equal to age 60. It's the value that you'll get at age 60. However, your resignation benefit, that is as at now. So in order to match them up apples with apples, you want to get a GEPF statement that's about a month before you had to retire, and then you can run the comparison, right? Now, one other important note here is if you are past 60, so if you are 60 years older or older and moving up to 65, then the value on your GEPF statement, the retirement benefit, it's calculated to age 65, right? So not at 60, it's always forward projected. This is why you'd notice if you had to leave prematurely, if you had to retire earlier, that your benefits are actually reduced because the benefits on the statement are actually calculated ahead. Now let's go on. What takes place from a resignation perspective? What are the costs? The first thing you'd want to do is just understanding how money moves, right? So then you get to understand where the costs start to come up. Now, currently you have money that's sitting within GEPF. That's currently where the funds are. And your first step is you want to move this through to an approved fund. Now, bearing in mind, the preservation fund is not the only approved fund that's available. You want to compare both options again to decide which one's best for you. But this is your first step. You want to make the move to an approved fund. Now, when you're moving it over to an approved fund, it means you're using an insurance company vehicle. And for every time you're using an insurance company vehicle, you've got to be mindful that there's going to be some type of cost. Now, the cost for an approved fund is 3.45%. I'll do all the calculations for you shortly. Nothing for you to do right now. Just understand the framework. The next step from here is in the approved fund, it cannot sit there because you need to get an income and you want to get your lump sum. So you can take up to 1/3 of this in cash. And this time it's a true 1/3, right? So unlike how it had operated on the GEPF side, where the benefit itself was a calculated benefit, here, this is the true 1/3 value. So in the example I used with the member, you'll see it now, the member actually gets the 1.7 million. The next step from here is there's a portion of money that's going to be invested. Now, there's many different ways. In fact, there's 5 different ways in which the money could be invested. You want to, again, look at all 5 options in order to compare which one's most appropriate. Once you determine that, this is where the next set of cost is going to come in, right? So this is where you're going to invest. And this is actually the place that starts providing you with the income, right? If you had to resign. Now, there's another cost that's here, which is at 1.725%. I've given you all these figures, including VAT, right? So all these figures are including VAT here. So what does this look like when we do it practically, right? And I'm heading back onto the statement for the member so that you can see how the calculations are done. So if you look here, the cost of resignation initially, the transfer to the approved fund, and notice I'm using the member's 5.1 million value, that's 3.45%, moving over to the approved fund. And then you can see the total there is 176,000. Then transferred to the income fund, which is the next stage. This is the 2/3 portion. There's 1.725 as I've just illustrated for you. Adding up the both costs, it's 235,000. So now we can start to compare the two side by side. So if you look at it, the initial cost for this particular member, if the member had to retire, that initial cost is 448,980 rands. The initial cost and resignation for this member is 235,513 rand. So when you see it like this, you'll be in a position to start to compare which one is best for you. Now, if you were this member, which option would you choose from a cost perspective? The next thing I want to share with you is, what if there was a way I could show you that the initial cost of resignation would actually be 0? Is that something that would be of value for you? Is that something that you'd find helpful? If it is, I put in my email address here. You're welcome to send an email, share your information. I can't guarantee that I can assist every single member or even yourself. But when you share your information, I'll be able to tell you if you're going to be a right fit for the kind of profile that we're working with. And then I want to share with you very quickly the hidden costs, right? The hidden costs, because these are some of the things that most members never get to see. Most members are not really aware of it because they're not really calculating. And the hidden cost comes in from the perspective of what happens after 5 years. So let's assume that you had to opt to retire, or we'll use the example of this member. This member opts to retire, and after 5 years, exactly after 5 years, this member passes away. So in the calculation that I'm doing here, I'm looking at what's the monthly income that this member would get. In this case, you can see 28,360. I'm multiplying it that amount by 60 months. And the reason I'm choosing 60 months is that's a 5-year period, right? So this is the initial income that's coming over a 5-year period. Why am I doing this? I want to see how much of money this member would get out after 5 years, right? And then we're going to compare it with the resignation value. Now, notice every year there's an increase. Again, you want to look at this very carefully because the increase according to GEPF is determined as per inflation, meaning the trustees will determine what the increase is going to be. Sometimes it could be inflation, sometimes it could be a bit lower. But in my example, I've been very generous and I've used a 10% increase, right? And you'll see on the GEPF side, 10% is not really how they would do the increase. So that's a further 136,000. So now when you add up all the amounts, which is the monthly income, the increase on that income every year, and then we're adding the lump sum gratuity, the total value sits at 3,097,000. Meaning for this particular member, estimated after the first 5 years of retirement, this member gets 3,097,000. Now notice there's a big gap there between the resignation value sitting at 5.1 million and the amount that this member is collecting after the first 5 years. Exactly how much does this work out to? What's the difference? This is 2,022,809 rand for this member on this calculation, right? Meaning if this member had to retire and passes away after 5 years, this is the money that's left behind. This is what I call the hidden cost, right? Now, naturally, if the member has a spouse, then there's a reduced income that's going to the spouse. But if the member has no spouse, in your case, let's say there's no spouse, this is the amount of money that you're leaving behind to GEPF. So this is what I refer to as the hidden cost. Then I want to share with you a step further what takes place on resignation. Now, there's different ways in which you can structure the resignation, right? But assuming you're going on the option where you are investing, so this is your pool of capital that sits here. And this is the amount, well, basically that money has to be invested somewhere. And the place that you invest starts providing you with a return. Naturally, you'd want to start drawing an income out of this, which is on this end. And the insurance company would have to charge you a cost, right? They'd have to charge you a cost. Now, what's the reason for this cost or fee? It's simply this. In the event of you passing away, so in the event of you passing away, how much does the insurance company get? This is again, if it's structured well. In the event of you passing away, the insurance company gets zero. They get absolutely nothing. So notice the style of costing is different. On GEPF side, there's no mention of what the monthly costs are, because in the end, when a member retires and passes away, whatever's sitting in that pool, whatever you've got left behind, that belongs to GEPF, again, if you don't have a spouse, right? Or kids who are physically disabled. On the flip side, on resignation, if you're going this route where you invest in capital, whatever sits inside that capital does not belong to the insurance company. It belongs to whom you've chosen as your beneficiary. So they get to benefit from this. The only way that the insurance company makes a profit is by them charging you a small monthly bank fee, right? Or a small monthly bank charge, sort of. Almost like how your bank has a bank fee when you are transacting with them. It's the same on this side. The insurance company will have a transaction fee because they're holding your funds. So this allows you now to compare the difference between the two, retirement and resignation. You have a stronger understanding. You can watch this video again in order to compare the costs, or if you're looking for a shortcut where you want to have this done for you, get this done with the finer details. I'm leaving my information on the screen. You can pop me an email and then I'll guide you step by step on what you need to do in order to compare the cost of the video. Now, if you found this video helpful, click on the thumbs up. If you have found information on this video that you didn't know before, comment below. Let's help other members out so that you can start to share the information. I also want to encourage you to do that as well. Share with your friends and colleagues, other GEPF members like yourself, who want to know this difference between retirement and resignation from a cost perspective and see how it impacts them. Good. If you've not already done so, I encourage you to subscribe to the video so that you're able to get access to my YouTube channel, so that you're able to get access to the other videos as soon as we put them out for GEPF members.